much, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister consider that China represents a current threat to this country? And could the Minister expand on the work that his officials are doing working with member services to remove potential security weaknesses, not just from this building, but also from MPs' constituency offices and our homes?
Minister.
I'm very grateful to the Chair of the Select Committee, as I always am. On her second point, let me come back to her, because I think it's a valid concern that she's raised, and rather than give her a response now, let me consider the facts of the case, and I'll come back to her with a more considered response. In terms of her first point, I fear that I'm going to disappoint her and maybe some other members opposite by not diverting from the policy that the government previously has confirmed in this place, and that is that the government fully recognises that China poses a series of threats to UK national security: cyber attacks, foreign interference and espionage targeting our democratic institutions, including also the transnational repression of Hong Kongers in this country. That is why we've made the announcements that we have, and that is why we will continue to do everything that we can to guard against that threat.
Alex Burskett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his statement, and also want to put on record my tribute to the missing crew member, those searching for him, and to all of those who keep us safe. With respect to the package of measures he's set out today, I welcome them. And it is important, of course, with the news today about the networking sites being used, whilst, of course, as has been said, this is not new. It's important to keep the risk elevated and to remind all those potentially affected of that. He knows, because we've conversed about it regularly, that I take an interest in the Defending Democracy Task Force, and so I wonder if you can say a little bit more about the series of protective security campaigns that will be coordinated through it. And can I suggest that as part of the outreach to all of the different stakeholders he's mentioned, that the task force gives thought to some sort of centralised toolkit that pulls together all of the guidance, the information, and which is evergreen and constantly being updated, to ensure that all affected stakeholders in and outside of this place have it at their fingertips, so that we can keep ourselves safe from people who are a threat to us.
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to him for his comments today, and also the points that he's made previously about the importance of the Defending Democracy Task Force. It wasn't a given that the government would necessarily continue in the way that the previous government, the previous Security Minister, had invested in the Defending Democracy Task Force. But I took the view, on good advice from my predecessor, that that was the best way, the fulcrum point, to coordinate that activity across government. And I think he was right about that. And that is why we've really invested in it as a process. That is why it is truly wired across government and law enforcement. That is why the Prime Minister recently renewed the mandate of it. And that is why I personally invest a very significant amount of time in it every single day, because I believe in the work that it is doing, and I believe it provides the right forum in order to lead this work, including the kind of work that the Honourable Member mentioned. The protective security campaigns, I think, are really important, because whilst most Right Honourable and Honourable Members are sensible and diligent members of this House, we have to ensure that everybody who might be at threat or at risk has the information that they need in order to make informed decisions. And that's why, on a number of fronts, we will up our game and make sure all of the necessary information is provided to the people who needed it. His point about the toolkit is a really good one. I will take that away, consider it, and come back to him. But I'm very grateful for his contribution.
Tom Tugunda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if I may begin by saying to the Minister in his place, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to hear his statement today and to hear the areas where he's taking things forward. I particularly welcome the update on the connected devices. I merely mentioned there are a few other areas where connected devices are very real. We've spoken briefly, my honourable friend spoke from the dispatch box about vehicles, which are naturally intelligence gathering platforms on wheels when they're made in Beijing and shipped over here. And there are a whole series of other areas where we're seeing this level of threat continue and deepen. Now, he also spoke about the fact that we do need a relationship with China, and I don't disagree with him on that. But it is somewhat insulting when the Chancellor goes to Beijing and comes back with £600 million of investment over 5 years. Frankly, it's peanuts. Chinese FDI in the UK is less than 0.2%, according to the government's own figures, the trade and investment figures. And so what we need to be doing is looking at where we can compensate for that dependency. Perhaps, for example, by increasing US FDI by 1%, which would be almost double what the Chinese investment is. 1% on the US is almost double what the Chinese invest. So we need to be looking around the world at alternatives. We need to be clear-eyed about the threats. And I reiterate the point that my honourable friend made from the dispatch box. We do need to introduce China on the enhanced tier of furs.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman for the points that he's made and the advice that he's offered previously. And I think the points that he makes about connected devices and about vehicles are well made, and I can give him an absolute assurance that we consider them very, very carefully. He made a point about engagement, and he referenced the Chancellor's visit. I can assure him that all ministers and all officials who visit China will deliver a coherent and strong set of messages about the concerns that we have with regard to our national security. That's specifically why I referenced in my earlier remarks that the Foreign Secretary spoke specifically about these matters with her Chinese counterpart on the 6th of November. She was absolutely clear with the Foreign Minister that any activity that threatens UK national security will not be tolerated. So I give him and the House an absolute assurance that even where there are engagement activities that might on the face of it relate to other areas of government business, there will be a consistency about the messaging. He will know, though, from his time in government, that in addition to the areas of cooperation and areas where there is a requirement to engage that I listed earlier, both within departmental responsibilities that sit in the Home Office, there is merit often in engaging with China on a range of matters that aren't necessarily particularly well understood. So we do need to have that constructive engagement with the country, but it needs to be absolutely underpinned by a desire to enhance and preserve our national security, and that is the approach that I will always take with it.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, can I thank the Minister for the strength of his message about our efforts to stop transnational repression of our constituents, including the Hong Kongers in Milton Keynes, and can we continue to have a dialogue on how my constituents continue to feel unsafe in the UK. I wanted to raise an issue that goes alongside Mr. Speaker's conference, which is the online world and how we protect and defend our democracy in that online space, particularly from foreign actors, state actors, their proxies and non-state actors who use the online environment to destabilise our democracy. I would ask, would he meet with me to talk about some amendments that I'm preparing for the elections bill to ensure that we do not have these threats online and we protect them as much as we protect ourselves from the threats offline?
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to her, and let me reiterate what I said previously about how completely unacceptable it is that any transnational repression takes place in this country, and the government will continue to stand with and support members of the Hong Kong community who've relocated here to the UK. She's right also to raise the important work done by the Speakers' Conference. And at the most recent meeting of the Defending Democracy Task Force, we looked carefully at the recommendations. There's a lot of very positive work that has been done by Mr. Speaker's Commission, and we will want to work very closely with him in order to deliver where we can on the recommendations. She's absolutely right to raise the importance of the online environment, and these are conversations that I'm having with colleagues across government, including with DCIT. In terms of the point about the meeting, she will understand that the particular piece of legislation is an MHCLG lead, but I'll make sure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister, whether that is myself or a colleague in the other department.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In Wokingham, we have a really strong Hong Kong community. They tell me regularly how concerned they are about the growing threat of Chinese espionage and the influence in our politics. Many of them will have bounties levied on their heads. What is the Minister doing to ease the concerns of our Hong Kong community, especially my constituents, and what is he doing to protect them and to protect our institutions.
Mr. Speaker, it's an entirely fair and reasonable point, and let me give him reassurances further to what I've already said today and on other occasions. The government will continue to stand with and support members of the Hong Kong community who've relocated here to the UK. I recently met with members of that community myself, specifically to discuss their concerns. The Defending Democracy Task Force is doing a lot of work on our response to transnational repression, but if he has any further concerns, I'll be very happy to meet to discuss them further.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Does the government accept that China is a bad faith actor whose basic technique can be summed up by a single phrase, buy influence and build dependency? Isn't that exactly what's happened in our universities?
Minister.
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman who speaks with great authority on this matter will know that I am limited in terms of the way in which I can describe the nature of the relationship, and I've given him the characterisation as I think it's appropriate. We do have to be a bit pragmatic in terms of the world that we live in. We have to do what we can to secure our national security, whilst at the same time ensuring that we are engaging in a way that is advantageous to our country and our economy. Any government, the previous one, this government, has to balance those sometimes competing interests, but this government will do it in a way that always makes sure that we safeguard our national security.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I'm great respect for the Minister himself, but I must say that listening to what he has said today, bringing forward this whole issue of the China espionage case, following on from the collapse spy case, following on from the Christine Lee case, and the other spying that took place here in the House, doesn't he look back at this and think this is peculiar? Because we've got Hong Kongers here in the UK, now with bounties on their heads, threatened daily by China, dragged into illegal police stations. And then the Minister talked about all the other things, threats to our democracy, threats to our industry, cyber threats through IoTs, threats to our universities, and threats to our MPs who are sanctioned and who daily have to face these challenges. Doesn't that make a bit of a mockery of the idea that China is not a continuing threat and that they are not now in the upper tier of furs, as my honourable friend from the Dispatch Box called for? Surely it is time. The number one priority for a government is defence of the realm. Balancing priorities does not trump defence of the realm.
Minister.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the Right Honourable Gentleman, and he has engaged consistently on these matters for a number of years, and rightly so. What I would say to him is that we have today announced a comprehensive set of measures, but I've been clear about the willingness of the government to go further where that is required. I've also been very clear, as I have on previous occasions, about the nature of the threat and the concerns that this government has about that threat. He's right about the defence of the realm. That is the most important job of any government. But we also have to be honest about the fact that we do need to engage with China. So we need to make sure that we are engaging on our terms and on a way that is advantageous to us. I know that he has a very long-standing interest in the embassy, and he knows what my response will be with regard to that. I understand the point he's made about furs, and he will have heard the response that I've given already. I hope, despite the concerns he's expressed, that he would acknowledge that we take these matters seriously and that we're doing everything that we can to address the nature of the threat.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome a great deal of what the Minister has said in his statement, and I'm sure he would agree with me that just as we know China can be simultaneously national security threat and economic opportunity, China knows that too, which means that even if it were not the right thing to do in and of itself, as of course it is, standing up for our national security, because China respects strength, is unlikely to prejudice any international trading relationship we seek to pursue with it. But can I ask him one specific thing in relation to the embassy and ask for his help? He knows, and I know he respects the role of the Intelligence and Security Committee. He knows that that committee is relied upon by this House to provide judgment on those matters where intelligence is involved and the whole House cannot do so. The embassy is clearly one of those, And if the government seeks to make a decision on that before Christmas, and he may not be able to say whether that is still the case, but if it is the case, can he ensure that the ISC has before it all the material we need on which to make a judgment on behalf of the House? Because as of yet, we do not.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As I often find myself in violent agreement with the Right Honourable Gentleman, because he makes good points in a very reasonable way. It isn't necessarily for me to talk about the nature of our diplomatic relationship with China, because obviously, as he will understand, that is a Foreign Office lead. But I think he is right in the way that he characterises our approach. I believe in being straight with this House and straight with the countries that we deal with. And I think he's right that it doesn't in any way disadvantage us to be straightforward and to be strong. And that's why I've very carefully chosen the language that I've used today to indicate the strength of feeling about the nature of the threat that we face. Now, I think he made an entirely reasonable point about the embassy. I won't bore him and the House with kind of further discussion about it being a quasi-judicial decision that will be made by the Secretary of State for MHCLG, although that clearly is the case. I think there is an important role for the ISC to look at the nature of the decision that is being made, and at the appropriate moment, when we're able to do so, I'll make sure that his committee is properly briefed on that issue.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the comments today by the Minister and would repeat the calls for China to be added to FIRS. But I have specific concerns about Edinburgh and Scotland in general. One is the continuing lack of clarity about what is to happen to Mingyang and whether, if it is to take part in the construction of the offshore wind farm in the North Sea, there will be mitigating factors put in place to stop it having on-off switches and on our energy security. We have a very large Chinese consulate in Edinburgh West, which is causing concern to my constituents because of the size of the dishes on the roof, and they're concerned about activity. And having been myself subjected to filming while speaking at a Hong Kong rally, we are concerned about the security of our Hong Kong nationals in Edinburgh. But with the Scottish elections coming up next year, can the Minister reassure me about discussions which are taking place with the devolved authorities to ensure that they are aware of the continuing and increasing threat from Chinese espionage?
Minister.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to her. I think she made important points about her great city. I can give her assurance that there is that engagement taking place, but I will reflect on the points that she has made and consider whether we need to do more. I know she will acknowledge that I specifically referenced the devolved assemblies in my opening remarks, but if she thinks that there is more that we could and should be doing, then I'd be very happy to have that conversation with her.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is a welcome statement from the Security Minister, for whom I have high regard, and know the House does too. He will be familiar with the report